Welcome back, everybody, to Pro Football Plus. It is a privilege to have all of you on board with us today. We're excited because we're doing our official, not unofficial, but official NFC predictions for the night. We're going to walk everybody through all of our playoffs, the finals playoffs tonight, our picks, and we're going to have one Super Bowl winner for our NFC representative for the Super Bowl from each person on our panel tonight. Youssef is back in the building. Shane is back in the building. We're efforting Austin, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make it or not. So if he jumps in later on, we'll give him a shout out as well to do his NFC picks. But thank you all of you for joining us. The football season is just weeks away. We can taste it now. All right. It's just right there. We're so close. And so let's get rolling. Shane, you're batting leadoff as always. Give us your four division winners and then the seeding for those four division winners.
Okay, so starting with the four division winners, I went in the NFC East. I went with Philly. The hardest one for me was the North. I picked the Lions over the Packers, but I think the Packers will be extremely close. In the South, I went with the Falcons, and in the West, 49ers.
All right, no major surprises there. Now, what's your seeding on the Eagles?
So on the Eagles, I have them that they'll be the third seed.
Number 3.
I have the Lions will be the second seed.
Number 2 for them. I think that's going to be the interesting one for everybody tonight. What do you do with Detroit? Not only as a division winner, but as a seeding as well.
I put them at number 2. 49ers I had as the number 1 seed.
49ers as the 1.
I picked the Falcons as the lowest of the winners. So they'll be in the 4th.
All right, so that's Shane's 4 division winners and the seeds. We're going to come back to him in just a minute and catch his wild cards. Not too different from mine. Matter of fact, I'll tell you mine here in just a second. Youssef, where are you lining up on this, man?
All right, I got the division winners. I got the Eagles winning the East in a close one. I got San Fran in the West. I got the Packers taking the North. And I got the Falcons taking the South, believe it or not.
All right, so only one difference. And I think most people are kind of in that battle of, hey, do we pick the Lions again or the up-and-coming Packers? Not an easy choice. You went with the Packers. What seed did you give Green Bay?
I gave Green Bay the 3 seed.
The 3 seed. All right, I like it. And I'm assuming Atlanta's got the 4 here for you?
Yeah.
Atlanta's got the 4. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I got Atlanta's the 4 seed as well, winning their division. And who's the number 1 for you?
Oh, San Fran's the number 1 seed.
San Fran's the 1. And then that's going to leave, you said you had the Eagles in a close one.
Yeah, I got the Eagles taking the 2.
Eagles taking the 2. So that's a little bit interesting that you had not only Detroit missing the division, but you've got the Eagles sliding up there to the 2 seed. So we'll come back to you, Youssef, and see what your wild cards are and what your matchups are. Austin's not here tonight so far, so we'll skip him for the evening. I've already got mine laid out here, including wild cards. So I've got San Francisco as the 1, and both of y'all had the same thing there. I didn't want to just go chalk here, man. I didn't, but I just couldn't come up with a reason why San Francisco wasn't going to win that 1 seed as far as the regular season goes. So I got them there. Detroit is my 2, winning the division. And then I've got the Falcons winning the South. They're going to be the 4 for me, same thing as y'all had. And then I've got the Eagles winning. They're the 3 seed. I've got them winning their division. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my wild cards. Let me go back and grab yours. Cowboys picking up 1 wild card. They're going to face the Lions in the first round for me. So that should be a fun matchup right there. 2 tight teams, I think, as far as a playoff matchup goes. Green Bay picks up another wild card for me. I couldn't leave them out. I just couldn't find any reason to leave them out of this wild card scenario. I couldn't find one. And I was tempted to put them up at the division win, but I still like Detroit better, just all things considered. And then the Rams. I'm pretty big on the Rams here. To me, that there's not a lot keeping the Rams from even doing damage in the playoffs. If they can develop a little bit on that defensive side of the football, the offense is there. And Sean McVay knows how to coach them up. So we'll see. But for now, Rams picking up that other wild card spot as the 5 seed, actually, for me, going up against Atlanta. We'll walk through my matchups here in a minute, but let's go back to Yusef. Yusef, who's your 3 wild cards and who are they playing?
All right. I got Detroit. They're going to be in, I guess they'll be at the 5.
I'm sorry. Tell you what, let me scroll down I got y'all out of order, and I apologize because I'm flipping the screen here. We'll stick with you, Yusef. Yeah, you got Detroit.
Yeah, I got
them. Who are they playing?
I got them at the 5.
At the 5.
They should be going up against Atlanta. I guess that's how that should work. I have my second wild card. I got the Rams there, one of the best coaches in the league, strong defense. They got outstanding offensive output out there, especially at the skill positions. I got them at the 6th spot, at the 7th spot, excuse me. So they're playing Philly. Yeah. And I got Dallas in the 6th.
That's a tough matchup right there, Eagles and Rams. Yeah. So, and you said Dallas is the other
Dallas
one?
is at the 6th. Yeah, they can arguably still win the division, but you got the 5th best quarterback in the league. He's still on the team, but they got a lot of upheaval out there. So I'm thinking that might be an opportunity for them to fall back a little bit.
Yusef, we're going to come back to your matchups and the winners, but this is a playoff rematch right here. Packers and Cowboys. We'll see what Yusef's got them doing in the second go-around. Shane, I'm sorry I skipped you, but we're back to you. We've got your division winners. Who are your wild cards?
I mean, other than shuffling numbers, I mean, the 3 of us agree. So right. I have Cowboys at 5. I have the Packers at 6. And then I, too, have the Rams at 7.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
As we all kind of picked some returning ones, I think Detroit versus LA this year is going to be even more fired up than it was before. So,
shoot, Detroit versus the Rams might be 42-40, man. I mean, those 2 teams can.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to get rid of Stafford, and if I'm the Rams this year, I'm going to try to outscore everybody because I don't know what my defense is going to show. You lose Aaron Donald, and I know the Lions are going to put the gas on. They're going to try to outscore people too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Shane, I'm going to stick with you here. We're going to advance all the way to your final 2 teams here in the NFC is what we'll do it. So go ahead and walk us through your matchup. Start wherever you want, and we'll work our way through it.
Okay, so I'll go top to bottom. So I have the Lions over the Rams. I think we kind of already discussed that. Then I think it's going to be a score fest, but I think the Lions pull it out. Then I went Eagles over Packers. And then I went Cowboys over Falcons.
All right. And the Cowboys advancing, that's an interesting one right there. I'm not disagreeing with it, but we've got the Cowboys and the Eagles for you sitting here in the second round, not playing each other, but still a pretty good matchup there. All right. That leaves us with your Lions playing the Eagles and the Cowboys and the 49ers. Go ahead and walk us through that.
I went Lions over the Eagles, and I went 49ers over the Cowboys.
Go ahead and talk us through that a little bit. Were either of those matchups hard for you?
I mean, I think the Lions versus Philly will be the more difficult one for me to see. I think, like Yusuf said, I mean, there's a ton of problems with the Cowboys. But I think they'll show up for one round, and if you don't play San Francisco in a Super Bowl, they're going to be the favorite until they get to the Super Bowl where they've proven that they might be the Bills of the West. I'm going to keep picking them. They'll pull it together. I don't see the Cowboys. I think they'll be competitive in the East, but I don't think they're a power by any stretch of the imagination. And normally late in the season is when something glitches out for them. And so that's why I think that one will be difficult. Philadelphia, they were the ones, like, I think they win the East, but they're give and go. You know, the late last season just disintegrated as a team. So, I mean, if that pops up again this year, it's the same thing. They're my one worry out of this selection.
And to confirm, you had the Lions actually advancing in this matchup. Is that right?
I actually picked San Francisco. I think they are truthfully going to be the Bills of the West. So I think they'll make it again in the Super Bowl. And then, but beyond that, yeah,
You're going to come up really close to where I'm at. And I'll get to mine in a second. But it was really hard here in the NFC, Shane. It was really hard to find these dark horses that I really felt like putting into the playoffs and then advancing anywhere. And I know it's awfully similar because mine's going to look very similar, the same. I know it's awfully similar to last year, and we know every year something shakes up, right?
mm-hmm.
But actually sitting here and predicting an injury or predicting a team that no shows, I don't see it. I don't see that as far as my predictions go. I figure it's going to happen, but it's hard to predict.
Well, and I think the big toss-up is the NFC South. Like, I just think that's a bad division. So if you're the Falcons and everything clicks for you, you win that division easily. What do you do when you face off against some of these other teams? Like you said, in the AFC, I mean, I could throw names in a hat and start picking people out and go, hey, I mean, they got a chance if they make it to the wild card. They might be dangerous. Right. They've got this, they got that. I think in the NFC, the last couple of years have continued to play out. Like, you're going to have those same set of teams. You can mix and match. It's going to depend on who gets a home field advantage and things like that. But, I mean, San Francisco at home against anybody has been difficult for them to get a winning start. So I think that's the one. And if Detroit had attacked the draft a little bit more, I would definitely pick them as a Super Bowl contender. But I wasn't real happy with their draft, and I think they missed out, and they could have really solidified some questions that I think they're going to show this year. So,
Shane, we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes. We're going to talk about, was there anybody that it was tough to leave out of the playoffs on the NFC side? Yusef, now we're moving on to you, man. We've got your matchups. Walk us through them one by one. Tell us our winners, and we'll talk about maybe where you think the best game is the toughest game for you to pick.
All right, this won't be easy, but as far as the Lions and Falcons deal, I'm going with the Lions there. I think the Falcons are much improved with having Cousins back there. I think if I have my numbers correct, they lost 10 games last year. They lost to Detroit, Jacksonville, Washington, Tennessee, Minnesota, Arizona, Carolina, Tampa, Chicago, and Saints. I don't know if you see a theme in it anywhere, but those are not upper tier teams, and they lost to those teams. And most of the time it was because of a combination of coaching or quarterback play from Desmond Ridder. So they don't have either of those problems on this team this year. So they got veteran experience, at least at the quarterback spot. The coaching should improve because the last situation wasn't good at all. So that shouldn't happen in this year. So they should be in a good spot, but they're not strong enough to take on the Lions yet. The Lions are a juggernaut in so many ways. They got some issues that we'll talk about later on, but then Lions got this one handily. Again, the Cowboys and the Packers matchup. I'm going to keep doing this every time it comes up because it's just how I'm wired. I don't see the Cowboys beating the Packers. I'm sorry. Probably only because the number one reason is because it's a prime time postseason implicated kind of game, and the Cowboys don't do well in those. So it's just that simple. I don't have any great analysis. I ain't talk about A gaps and B gaps, none of that stuff. They just can't win when it matters. Pure and simple. The Rams and the Eagles, I like this one a lot. The Rams are one of those teams I'm so mad at because how do they keep on, still being good when they lose so much? Ticks me off, but they really are good. I got the Eagles here, though. I think they're going to win, not in a blowout. I think it'll be a close matchup because they're kind of evenly matched, especially at the wide receiver spot. But I think the Eagles, on the defensive side, especially with their rush, I think that's going to be something that's going to be a challenge for Stafford to handle if he is playing at this point in the season. So I got the Eagles with a slight win over there. We're moving on to the next part. We're staying right here for a little bit.
Now, I do have a quick question for you, Seth. How much of the Eagles, because I think a lot of people feel like the Eagles aren't going to be what they were 2 seasons ago, right, when they almost beat Kansas City. But now all three of us have them, and I'm going to have them too, and doing very well as far as winning the division and then having a chance in the playoffs to at least do something, right? How much of that, though, is the rest of the division just isn't very strong. The Cowboys maybe taking a half step back versus the Eagles actually returning to full strength, as we might know the Eagles.
I think the Eagles got Cowboys disease. Same thing that's happening to the Cowboys is going to happen to them too. They got a very easy schedule. They got probably one tough road trip in the first 7 games. That's going to be Tampa Bay, which is no guarantee they're going to win that. They didn't win it last year. I think the challenge is that they don't come to play with teams they should actually beat. So they got a really soft schedule, especially in the middle and in the final 5 games. Team they should beat, like us again. Look what happened last year in January. We beat them handily, and they were fully loaded, and they had no reason to lay down on us in that part of the season because they were playing for something, and we beat them by almost about almost 3 scores. So I feel like they don't come to play when it counts. It's a culture issue on their team, and since Sirianni is still there and all the same players are still there, I'm guessing the issue probably hasn't been solved. Just a shot in the dark there. So I think they're going to be challenged with getting as far as people think they should be getting, which is to a Super Bowl. I don't see it happening. Spoiler alert. I don't think they're going to get that far.
Yeah, listen, I've got issues of my own with the Eagles, and a lot of it stems out of the front office, which is a really good front office. But I don't always like the way the Eagles have built their team over the past 2 or 3 years, even when they showed up in the Super Bowl. That was an excellent team, but I don't like everything they're doing. But I'm in the same boat. Eagles a good team. They should win the division. I don't really have them going too deep into the playoffs, though. But let's find out. It is a fun matchup here. Eagles versus Packers, Yusef. Who you got winning that one?
I'm going with GB. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. I think I'm a little bit of high team. I don't know why I am. Them being the youngest team in the league, that should be a negative, but I think in this case it's a positive because they're kind of playing with house money. They added some strong players in the secondary, which is something that the Eagles don't have a strong secondary there. They tried to fix it with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but I don't think they really solved the problem completely. So GB has a great secondary. Their pass rush is pretty legit. Not consistent all the time, but they got a good thing going at quarterback. I got no problems with him. I think he's going to develop very well in that system. I think he's going to do really well throughout the course of this playoffs. He's not going to go always to the Super Bowl, but I think he's going to be pretty close to it. I think they're that good. I like what they did with Josh Jacobs, bringing him in. I don't know who's hurt more, him or Aaron Jones. I'm betting that maybe Jacobs will probably hurt less. So there you go. So you got a semi-healthy running back and a good backup. I think A.J. Dillon is still there, which I didn't know about. I found out about that on a different show, that Dillon is still there. I'm like, oh, wow. That helps. That's a plus. So they got some real strong talent out there, man. And even at wide receiver, some young guns, man. These guys like Dobbs and these boys and Christian Watson, they got swagger, man. I think that's a big deal. I feel like the Eagles are going in a different direction. So I'm going with the Packers on this one.
I like it. That's the trend right now. Whoever you like out of the North, a lot of us tend to put that team, whether it's Detroit or Green Bay, on into the final 2 of the NFC. Now, you've got Detroit against the 49ers. I figure these 2 teams play each other in the playoffs no matter which round it is. I mean, I don't know which round it's going to end up being, but I do figure these 2 teams have helped the Detroit and the 49ers are going to have another matchup here. You've got them here in the divisional round. Who wins?
Everybody's saying it's supposed to be the Lions and they go to the Super Bowl. Everybody except me. I'm going with the Niners. Niners won 5 Super Bowls in their last 7 shots at the Apple. So they know how to get back to the big dance. They're good at doing that part until they face the Chiefs in recent history. I'm concerned about them potentially not having Ayuk on their team. So I reserve the right to change my mind. But right now, it looks as though he may be getting traded. So if that happens, you're relying on Pearsall to be de facto number 2, and that's a rookie. I don't know. Juwan Johnson is good, but I don't know if he's a number 2 guy. I think he's always been a wide receiver 3. Probably is going to always be that in most cases. So I reserve the right to kind of change my mind in that regard. If he doesn't, if Ayuk doesn't stay, he gets traded, this could be a different team, and it could be a little bit more vulnerable at that spot. But right now, until they get beat, I don't think anybody can beat them. I don't think the Lions can either. Honestly, we haven't. I don't know if you want me to get into the Lions a little bit, but defensively, I don't really like where they are. See, on paper, they're saying, "Oh, we added some guys like you talking about DJ Reader and Kaminsky." That's what you're talking about. You didn't add no offense. You didn't add studs in the situation. You added some bodies in the situation. and then you got two. I think you got two rookies in your secondary, which you needed to do that because your secondary was struggling. So you got two rookies, Terry and Arnold, and I forget the other guy's name. Forgive me. I think it's Rakestraw. I think it is. But you bring in two rookies. Okay, you should do that because that area needed some help. That's fine, but it is still two rookies who haven't seen a lot of NFL action. So if the quarterback on the other side is any kind of veteran, these guys can be surprised at some point in time during a big game. That can cost them. But I don't like what they did on defense. Defense was a big problem from last year, and you would think that with the expectation they have to go to Super Bowl, because all you hear is Detroit, Super Bowl, Detroit, Super Bowl. If defense is your big problem, you should be going all out. The opposite of what the Cowboys are doing, instead of go all in, go all out, and replace defensive liabilities and fill those gaps and strengthen that. I don't think they did that by just bringing in Reed and Kaminsky, who are both hurt right now, by the way. So I don't know. I'm not ready to drink the Kool-Aid yet. Blue Kool-Aid is cool, but I'm not ready to drink that right now. I'm going to go ahead and stick with what I think is the safer pick. I'm going with the Niners on this one.
All right, and that brings us to your final two, Green Bay versus the 49ers in the championship round. And who pushes on?
I'm going with the Niners here for all the same reasons. They've been in this spot before. They know how to manage through a season and basically make sure everybody's moderately healthy or healthy at the right times. Because I see them sit guys that were probably ready to play, and they sat them anyway because they knew that they were a playoff team and they were preparing for their future as opposed to trying to live for the one game they were in, living in the present. So that's going to play a part too. Health is going to be a big factor, but like the Niners here, Green Bay is close, but I don't think they're ready for this particular spot right here, but it's going to be Niners.
All right, so that's two 49ers coming out, right? Because Shane picked the same thing as well. I'm going to have the same thing as well, but let's walk through the matchups just because it's fun. Detroit versus Dallas. That while those are two similar, I don't know, rosters and skill sets, I guess if you want to say it that way, this ain't gonna be a close matchup if that happens. Detroit's gonna run them out of the building. So Dallas's luck in the playoffs isn't very good, and Detroit's got the mojo, so they win. You go down to the Packers and the Eagles, but you, Seth, I think you have that matchup too, maybe in a different round. I think in the divisional round. This one was a tough one for me, but I'm going to go ahead and give it here to the Eagles because they have been there. This is a tight matchup. I just kind of like the Eagles a little bit in that matchup, but that's a tight one right there. And then you get the Falcons and the Rams. You know, I really like the Falcons to win that division, and I'm not sure that at the end of it all it's going to be super close if they gel at all like I think they can. But you get them to the playoffs, and it's like, well, I like the Rams better, you know? So I've got the exact same thing that one of y'all had. I've got the Rams advancing over the 49ers, over the Falcons. And that's, no slight to the Falcons, really. It's just the way it is. So that brings us to our divisional round matchups right here, the Lions versus the Eagles. I want to put the Lions in. I just feel like they've got more going on than the Eagles do at the moment. Again, I reserve the right to change my mind. Eagles got talent on that roster. Doesn't seem to be really connecting too much at the moment. And then you come to the Rams 49ers. I think that's a heck of a game right there. I really do. Rams versus 49ers. But at the end of the day, until I see something out of that Rams defense, I'm going to pick the 49ers because they're loaded on the defensive side of the football too. So I can't not pick the 49ers in that matchup, even though I do trust McVay and the offense to keep it close. And that brings us right back to the 49ers versus the winner of the North, right? We've all three got that, even though Yusef's got Green Bay. And I've got the 49ers as well winning that. So I hate to go chalk like that. That's largely chalk, right? That's largely Vegas odds. I hate to. And it's largely what we saw last year. But I just, man, if we've studied this all off season. We've gone through every division, and this is just kind of where I'm at. And obviously you guys aren't too far off of that. So we've all three got the 49ers coming out. And we do reserve the right to change our minds, all right? The second there's an injury happens, or the second somebody shows up on defense better than what we expected, we got the right to change our minds as always. All right, Shane, back to you. I'm going to scroll back to your playoffs so everybody can see it. Was there anybody that was really tough to leave out of this NFC playoffs? Because I'm thinking of a team right now that I know you're expecting some improvement from, but they didn't show up in your bracket. So how are you feeling about who was tough to leave out?
I mean, I had a couple that I thought were going to be difficult. I think Yusuf kind of mentioned the same problems with the Falcons where they lost some close games, but they might be able to pull it off. I think the Bears are going to be better this year. So if Green Bay slips, if that division becomes hard, I think they're tough. The one that I couldn't believe when I was setting this up that popped in my head was actually the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. That's
Yeah, and you know that I every opportunity to dump on the Cardinals I have throughout this podcast. But I mean, I think San Francisco is above everybody in that West. But if something happens, like you said, if Stafford goes down, if the defense can't perform without Donald, if Arizona outscores people, it could be difficult. It could be difficult because I think Seattle is going to regress. I think the Rams have an opportunity for what we just mentioned. And if Arizona, with the weapons they have, and Kyler Murray has a big year, I think they're tough. The other one was, if the Falcons, if something does happen, I actually think they're going to be okay. I mean, if you look at how the preseason games have gone, they might have a decent backup quarterback for, taking a pick. But I think that's the weakest one. So, I don't see Tampa being able to pull anything. I think the Saints are going to get worse this year. And Carolina could be a, Division I football team right now. I think it's going to be real rough for them again this year.
I view it largely the same. So I did give a thought to Seattle and Arizona. I gave it a thought. I'm like, man, I just don't see either of those teams having to play San Francisco and LA 4 times as part of that schedule that they play every year, and still coming up with a wild card spot. I just couldn't put it together. I did think about Tampa Bay because, hey, what if something happens to the Falcons? But I was like, man, even like you said, even if something does happen to the Falcons, I still think they have more talent altogether than Tampa Bay's got going on right now. So I'm still picking Atlanta. I think maybe the new coaching staff isn't the greatest ever. I do like them, but even if they're not the greatest ever, I still think they can do better with that talent on that roster than what Tampa Bay's working with on their roster right now. And then I thought about the Bears too, but again, that can be a muddy division. Do I actually think a third team's going to come out of that division with a wild card spot? I really don't think so. So I left them aside as well. Though it really wasn't tough to leave these teams out, but those were the ones that I was thinking about. Yourself, on your side, who was toughest to leave out, or was there anybody?
I had a thought about the Bucs because the defense is very good. I kind of just felt as though last year they were awarded the division as opposed to winning it outright. So it didn't give me a lot of confidence. I mean, the division is pretty bad, so I don't think it's a stretch by me saying that. But I think I thought about 2 teams beside them. I thought about the Bears, who I think in our predictions, I gave them a winning record. So they're probably going to have that, but not have enough room to get in, which would be unfortunate, but it's a good thing. It light their fire for next year and kind of give them a moxie to win some game they should have won. Because I think last year they didn't have a team that you thought was great, but they had some wins that they were right there in their hands and they gave it up. I could think of 4 teams that are in that category. They have 4, 5, 6 wins that were right there and they just lost it. So I think the Bears were in that category this year. I think they're going to have a better record. Just don't see a way for them to get in. So I was thinking about them. Now as a home pick, I was thinking about the Giants, trying to figure out who are they. So I wasn't thinking about putting them in, but I was just wishing I could. I don't know who they are exactly yet. We've seen a lot of things that look good, on paper at least. Again, it's like all the things that happened that were bad last year, they didn't have to happen. The O-line stuff, teams have gotten around that and still had winning records with the O-line like that. They lost 5 games, I think 5 points or less in each of these 5 games on average. We're talking about a 10-win season, potentially, with a 30th, 31st ranked O-line. So it's obviously insurmountable. Matter of fact, in Eli years, that O-line was ranked down at the bottom too, and they won championships. So I wish I could put them in, but I don't know who they are yet, so I got to just wait and see who they are and who they're going to become this year throughout all the adversities. But I think the Bears are the biggest team I was thinking about. That I wish I can get them in there because like they look so good, but there was no way for them to get in, so they kind of just got locked out because there were no more opportunities. But that was the main team I was thinking about was Chicago.
They do, and honestly, I like the Bears. I like where they're heading. I'm just not convinced that Matt Eberflus is the guy. And I know he knows what he's doing on defense, but as head coach, I'm still waiting to see for sure that he's the guy to lead this team off into the glory of in the future here. The roster is just about there. The roster is about ready to push, but I'm just not convinced he's the guy. So we'll see. Maybe he proves me wrong. I'll be glad if he does. I would love to see Chicago do a lot of winning. I haven't seen Chicago win since I was a little kid in any serious way. I mean, I know they made that Super Bowl run with Urlacher against the Colts, but in consistent winning year in and year out, it's been a long time. So I would love to see it. But coaching staff is open back. Yeah. So all right, Shane, we're back to you. Final thoughts here before we do our final 60, but final thoughts here on the playoffs and on the NFC side.
I think, like you said, Ben, the thing that popped up to my head the most is deja vu, and man, I'm really going chalk on this. I think everybody that we mentioned has like possibilities of getting into the playoffs. I think they're a toss up, and I think depending on how it plays out, the NFC East, like Yusuf said, I think of the Giants basically as like the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the same thing. You have some weapons around you. You don't protect with an offensive line, and then you're surprised when you drop games that you shouldn't drop. I think that's the same thing. The teams that we've picked to make it far, San Francisco, they don't drop games they're not supposed to drop. Very infrequently does that happen. I think for them, like Yusuf said, I mean, if you lose a piece of that and you're trusting a rookie to do that, what do? Does that mean that Kittle gets a lot more opportunities because he becomes your de facto number 2? Does that mean that you change the way that you use your offense? I trust Shanahan to change the offense around, but like I said, I really think it's going to be watching the NFC South lose games against each other and just some ineptitude in that. And as Yusuf said, I think the Bears make it right on the precipice. I think they're going to be just like Detroit, a couple of years ago, where they went from terrible and then they're right, almost make the playoffs, and then everybody's super excited. And then, like you said, with Eberflus, does that mean that he gets a little bit more of a chance? Do they kind of jump on his side and give him a shot, or do they decide that, hey, we need somebody else to come in here and revolutionize what we're doing? I think, prefacing for coming weeks, I mean, looking at the AFC, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to kind of solidify some selections for that run.
Yusuf, I'm coming to you for your final thoughts on the NFC before we do our final 60. But yeah, I'm gonna do 2 prefaces here as add-ons here. One of which you just said, Shane. On the AFC side, it will not be chalk, and it will not be easy, and it will not be all like this, where we're pretty much agreeing. I've got 12 teams myself on the AFC side who have every right to think they should be in the playoffs. So it's going to be messy over there. I mean, it's going to be wild and crazy, and we are not going to agree. Like, you can't take 12 teams, 3 or 4 different people, and come up with the same set of playoffs like we're doing here on the NFC side. It's just not going to happen. So it's going to be a fun discussion next week when we get into the AFC and see what the heck we do with all these teams, because there ain't room for all of them. And then on the other side, listen, I'm sure someone is shouting at us right now because we left out your team or we didn't even give them much consideration. We know we've been watching the NFL for a long time. It's not going to work out like this, all right? We know it. Somebody's going to get injured. Somebody's just not going to play well. Somebody's going to get off to a bad start. Somebody's going to surprise us. We know that, but we just don't see a reason to predict it right now is the issue. So, if you're a team out there that we left out, give us the evidence and we'll reconsider. All right, later in the season, we'll walk our way through it. Yusuf, final thoughts on what's happening here?
You read my mind, man. I don't even think it's going to happen like this. We talk about going chalk. That's really what we did, man. We took the safest options based on what we've been seeing.
I did, yes.
over the course of a 17, 18 game season. That's what we did. I'm pretty sure some of the stuff is not going to take place. I even have some evidence is why I think so, but not enough confidence to predict that this strange announcement it's going to happen. That's really like fantasy booking to a whole different level. I don't feel confident doing that in this scenario, man. But yeah, we just kind of went what we thought was the most reasonable route, what should happen based on what we've been seeing and the lack of changes in different areas on each team. But yeah, you're right, man. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. This is it. We're going with this for now, but we know I got some injury stuff too. In my 60, it's going to change your mind about a couple of these things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. And listen, no matter what you do, these rosters are constantly changing and these players are constantly changing. Some of them are improving, some of them are losing a step. So things change constantly throughout a season and then even during the playoffs. But we're so close, we can almost taste it now. I'm very much looking forward to it. And again, if you're watching this next week, we're going to do the AFC, and that's going to be wild over there. So check us out. All right, let's move on to our final 60 for the night. Shane, you were up first, man.
For my final 60, it kind of ties into the Green Bay Packers that we just talked about. My final 60 is on the growth of the NFL tight end again. I think teams are coming back to playing two tight ends that are both offensive weapons, where before you had a tight end that was a wide receiver, and then you also had a blocking guy. The Packers have two great young ones in Musgrave and Kraft. I think they're going to use them a lot better this year. You look at Buffalo, where they've basically decided that our tight ends are better than us going out and spending money on another wide receiver. You look at San Francisco, where they really go with a tight end and a fullback. Baltimore, again, they're more of a tight end and a fullback, but they've got Isaiah Likely. They've got Mark Andrews. Those are two offensive weapons. And I think that's a position that has steadily increased in the NFL. Part of it is the NFL is now taking chances on some FCS guys and giving them a shot, where, maybe you were a 6'6" wide receiver, and then all of a sudden they got you in a weight program, you put on 40 pounds of rip, and now you're a weapon as a tight end. I think that's a growing thing. You look at somebody like Dallas Goedert, that's exactly what he was. Sandy, he played at South Dakota, you give him a chance, all of a sudden he's a weapon. And I think watching the preseason, you see it as well. There's going to be some offensive firepower in the tight end position. And notice I didn't even mention Travis Kelce out of this group. So,
right. I love it for two reasons. And you're right across the board. I love it because I like old school football, right? Give me some variety. Don't just throw the ball 50, 40 times a game, but mix it up. But not only that, but from a style standpoint, we've seen defenses get lighter and lighter and lighter for 20 years now. This isn't new. It's been 20 years coming. The linebackers are lighter. The edge rushers now are what basically the linebacker sizes used to be on a lot of teams, not all of them, but a lot of them. And then we're seeing more defensive backs on the field with that third linebacker just taken off the field completely. So we're seeing these defenses get lighter. Why not use these big tight ends and these fullbacks to create the mismatches? It's just there waiting for you. So why not do it if you know how, and if you got a couple of guys that you've brought on the team to do just that? I absolutely love it, Shane. So yeah. Totally agree with you.
Yusuf's sitting there with the Michigan hat on. When Jim Harbaugh was there and Sharon Moore, there were times where they put three tight ends in one formation.
Yes.
We're gonna overpower you, and then every single guy I have can also catch. So that's the big change. You look at Dan Campbell, he went from Texas A&M, played long in the league, but he was known as a physical bruiser. That's what he is. That position now doesn't exist in the NFL again. They've gone the way to be able to go back to moving people where you're a tight end, but you're more of a wide out. And then if you can block anybody, then you're unthinkable. Like with Kittle, when he blocks anyone, he makes some amazing blocks, that helps to have a dad that was a longtime offensive line coach. But when you see any tight end get a piece of anybody, they're making a comment like it's the greatest block they've ever seen. So that tells you the dynamic shift of what that's made.
100%. And you actually beat me to it. I was literally going to segue into Yusuf's hat that he's showing off his national championship for. Is that a new hat, Yusuf? I haven't seen it before.
Not exactly, but I had to remind folks that people have been forgetting. So I'm doing a public service to make sure people don't forget that until the end of the season, there's only one national champion in this gold blue. People, my Twitter pages, they get help out there. They talk about other stuff. It's like, no, it's not about that right now. It's about this. live in this, drink this in, baby. This is what's happening until further notice. This is what's
Hail
going
to the
on.
victors.
True.
I'm frustrated with the comments out here. I'm like, you need to just respect this.
How many straight wins do they have against Ohio State now?
A lot.
Okay. All right, Yusef, give us your final 60, man.
All right, mine's going to be in the NFL range. We're going to stay in this. We're talking about NFC. Injuries are already changing the NFL landscape already. My Twitter feed has been going crazy the past few days. People are jumping off of bridges and mountains and stuff, going crazy on suicide watch. I'm just kidding about that part. But there's so much stuff happening right now. Same team we were talking about, the Atlanta Falcons, the guy that they were relying on to kind of be the de facto number 2 on their team is out for the entire season with a knee injury, Rondale Moore. They already had a weak wide receiver room to start with. So, they got in there. I mean, you can't say Darnell Mooney and think, oh, yeah, we're going to be okay. He was in Chicago. He's not there now for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs. This is the guy that you expect him to take over the number 1 role and kind of have Montgomery kind of be that 1B. He's out with a hamstring. No timetable for his return, but it's kind of concerning because he's a running back. Hamstring issues is not good. Anything lower leg with a running back is not great, especially the way he runs and the way he plays. Talk about Michigan, J.J. McCarthy. I didn't even know. I found out by accident. I was doing something else. I was working and found out knee surgery, out 4 to 6 weeks with meniscus. So that wasn't their plan, I'm sure. They didn't want Sam Darnold to be the guy for the entire year. They definitely didn't want what's your boy from San Fran that's on the team now? Nick, oh man, I'm blanking on his name. Nick Mullins. Yep. He wasn't part of the plan, put it like that. So 4 to 6 weeks is brutal. I hope it's shorter than that, but that's a scary situation. Most of the Saints offense have lower leg injuries. Literally, almost the entire offense has lower leg. I think Olave is the only one that does not hurt. That's scary. All lower leg. What's going on in New Orleans? And last thing, I want to avoid the additional stress, but 8 unnamed key players on my team, on the Giants, are injured as well. So I'm like,
wow.
8. How do you win when you don't have anybody to play and catch the ball, and throw the ball and stuff? So this is so everybody's stressed out about injuries already. It happens every year, but these just seem different to me for some reason because of who's being injured and if they have injuries, how they're injured. It seems different this year, so I don't know what it means, but that's all I can say.
Well, especially like you're saying with JJ, he looked really good. And then for you to wake up on Monday and find out, like, yeah, he's going for an MRI, like.
I didn't even know on Monday. I found out today.
Yeah, that's when I saw it again. Like, followed on my Twitter, and I was like, well, I just watched him play. He looked good.
It's rough. And listen, injuries have always been a part of the game, but when you get them in the preseason, a rash of them, it really tests your depth. And that means, hey, the guy who we thought was going to be a solid starter is gone, and now last year's 4th-round draft pick hopefully is good enough to do it. I mean, it really stretches your bench, your starters, everything. It's rough. Yeah, you don't want to get bit by that bug anytime, especially just a rash of them. So, all right, my final 60 for the night is the Olympics, all right? I don't always watch the Olympics every year. Sometimes work and family and life just don't allow me to do that. This year I did. Me and my family got to watch a bunch of it. I mean, a lot. We watched everything. We watched track and field. We watched swimming. We watched shot put. We watched, I mean, you name it. We watched it. Didn't watch breakdancing.
Breakdancing?
But listen, hey, look. If you want to know what I look like breakdancing, just go look at that girl from Australia, okay?
Well, know that you can make the Olympics, man.
I can make the Olympics.
Even you.
Even me. I'm going to come across with something here that I hope doesn't sound discouraging or as a wet blanket. I really mean for it to be an encouragement, but let me get to it. There are roughly 10,000 athletes that competed this year, give or take a few hundred, right? About 10,000 athletes. Only about 1,000 of them, give or take a few, are going to walk away with medals or walked away with medals this year. That means roughly 90% of them came away with no medals, and that's true in almost every Olympics. That really is the case. It's that big of a difference. And my point is this, most of these Olympians, not all of them, but most of them work really hard. We're talking 10-hour days, 6 days a week for years to even make it. Some of them make it to one Olympics, maybe two if they're lucky. Most of them never get a medal. Most of them don't even get close. And that doesn't even count the thousands more who just barely missed the cut this year, who were right there on the edge of getting into the Olympics and missed literally weeks before the Olympics started. And my point is this, we hear people like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and LeBron James. They are insanely incredible, and they talk about hard work, and they're right. You will not get very far without it, but you also don't get very far without the talent. And we see that every year with these Olympics, every 4 years, every 2 years. You can work your butt off and still finish in 19th place because you've hit a talent wall. You just weren't born tall enough, fast enough, quick enough, whatever enough, all right? And just because you didn't get a medal doesn't mean you should hold your head down or be ashamed. Or even if you didn't make the Olympics, doesn't mean you should be ashamed of the work you put in. You put in the work, and the results are what they are. If you can do better, do better. We've all seen talented people who wasted the talent. So I believe in the hard work. But a lot of these Olympians are the ones who barely missed the cut. Thousands of them, literally 90% of them, should still be very proud of the work they put in, the effort they put in, many of them for years, to just try to have a chance one time in their life to get a chance, only to maybe get beat by somebody who was born with a better talent set. All right. And that's just the way it is. That's life. Move on. But hats off to all those Olympians who worked so hard from all these different countries. And boy, I mean, they put in the time, and it really at a certain point does not get to be a work thing for most of them anymore. It just gets to be a talent thing. All right. So hats off to the ones who were talented enough and put in the work, and hats off to the ones who put in the same amount of work and just didn't even come close. So keep it up. Whatever you're doing in life, whether it's Olympic related or not, keep it up, put in the effort. You never know how far you're going to go until you put in the work, and then just appreciate whatever comes of it. So that's it. That's all I got. All right. Anybody else with anything before we shut it down for the night? Thank you all for listening. Next week, the AFC playoffs. Have a great one. Goodbye.